Never Split the Difference is a book written by Chris Voss, a former FBI hostage negotiator who spent years facing some of the toughest situations in life, where the wrong words could cost human lives. The lessons he shares are not from classrooms or business schools, but from the intense reality of talking to terrorists, kidnappers, and criminals, and trying to save lives without violence. From these life-and-death experiences, he discovered principles that also work in normal life, like in business, in relationships, in sales, in jobs, and even in daily disagreements with family and friends. The heart of the book is very simple. Negotiation is not about logic or compromise, but about human emotions. People do not make decisions like robots. They make choices because of how they feel, and if you understand those feelings, you can guide them towards the outcome you want. That is why the book is called Never Split the Difference, because splitting the difference usually means both sides are unhappy and the real solution is missed. Chris Voss explains that in the world of hostage negotiations, compromise is never the answer. Imagine kidnappers demand $1 million for a hostage, and you say you can pay only $500,000. If you split the difference at $750,000, the hostage might still die because you failed to understand what the kidnappers really wanted. In such moments, compromise is not safety, but danger. This example shows why the idea of compromise can be weak, because it often avoids real understanding. Instead of meeting halfway, Chris suggests we should learn how to talk in a way that makes the other side feel understood and safe, so that they lower their guard and start listening to you. Negotiation then becomes less about fighting and more about connecting. The first big lesson he gives is that listening is more powerful than talking. Most people believe negotiation means convincing the other person with strong arguments, facts, and logic. But Chris says that when emotions are high, facts do not matter. If a kidnapper has a gun in his hand, he does not care about logical reasons. He is overwhelmed by anger, fear, or desperation. The only way to calm him is to listen to him so deeply that he feels someone finally understands. When people feel understood, they relax. When they relax, they are ready to talk about solutions. That is why Chris teaches something he calls tactical empathy. It means stepping into the feelings of the other person and naming them. If someone is angry, you might say, "It looks like you're upset." If someone is worried, you might say, "It seems like you are afraid of being ignored." These simple statements, called labels, have a surprising effect. They make the person feel respected, and when people feel respected, they are more open to finding a middle path. Chris also teaches the technique of mirroring, which sounds very basic, but works like magic. Mirroring means repeating the last few words the other person just said, but in a curious tone, as if you want them to explain more. For example, if someone says, "I don't think we can agree on this deal," you can mirror them by saying, "You don't think we can agree?" This encourages them to keep talking and reveal their deeper concerns. Mirroring works because humans naturally like people who sound like them. It makes the conversation smooth, and it shows you are really listening. Even though it looks too simple, Chris shows through stories that it often changes the whole mood of a negotiation. Another lesson Chris shares is about the word no. Most people fear hearing no in negotiations. They feel no means failure. But Chris explains that no is actually the beginning of real negotiation. When someone says yes quickly, it can often be fake. People say yes just to escape or to avoid conflict, but later they do not follow through. On the other hand, when someone says no, they feel safe because they are protecting themselves. Once they feel safe, they're more open to talking honestly. Chris teaches that instead of pushing for yes, you should ask questions that allow people to say no comfortably. For example, instead of asking, "Do you want to continue this project?" you can ask, "Would you be against continuing this project?" When they say no, it feels like freedom to them, but it actually opens the door to deeper discussion. One of the most important moments in negotiation is when the other person says, "That's right." Chris explains that when people say, "You're right," they often just want to end the conversation politely. It does not mean they agree fully. But when they say, "That's right," it means you have summarized their feelings and situations so clearly that they feel truly understood. Reaching that moment is powerful because it means you are now standing on the same side. The way to reach it is by listening carefully and then summarizing what they said, not just their words but also their emotions. When they hear their own world reflected back, They feel a strong bond with you. Chris also talks about bending reality without force. One way to do this is by using calibrated questions. These are open questions that start with how or what. For example, instead of saying, "That price is too high," you ask, "How am I supposed to pay that much?" This question forces the other person to think about your situation and come up with a solution themselves. It shifts the responsibility to them, but without making them feel attacked. Calibrated questions keep the conversation going, and they make the other person feel like they are still in control while you are quietly guiding them. Chris explains that negotiation is not only about money, but about relationships. If you negotiate in a way that makes the other person feel cheated or ignored, even if you win the deal, you may lose trust forever. But if you make them feel respected and understood, even if they give you less than they wanted, they walk away satisfied because emotions matter more than numbers. He shares many stories from real hostage cases and also from business deals to prove that this principle works everywhere. He introduces the Ackerman bargaining method, which is a step-by-step way of reaching the number you want. You decide your target price in advance. Then you start with a lower offer and gradually increase in small steps, each time showing empathy and giving the impression that you are stretching to the maximum. You also use odd numbers instead of round numbers because they feel more genuine, like 47,500 instead of 50,000. Sometimes you add a small non-monetary gift at the end to show goodwill. This method slowly convinces the other side that you have truly reached your limit, and often they accept it happily. As the book goes deeper, Chris repeats one main message again and again. People are driven by emotions, not logic. If you ignore emotions, you will fail. If you respect emotions, you will succeed. He shows that the same skills that save lives in hostage crises can also help in asking for a salary raise, making a business deal, buying a car, or even talking with your children. Negotiation is everywhere in life because life itself is full of small and big negotiations. As the story of this book continues, Chris Voss keeps reminding us that negotiation is a psychological game, not a battle of numbers. When two people sit across the table, each one is not just carrying facts and arguments, but also hidden fears, insecurities, and hopes. The real negotiation is not happening in the words being exchanged, but in the emotions underneath. If you fail to see that, you may get trapped in endless back and forth, while the other side never truly opens up. Chris tells us that his years of talking to criminals taught him something most people ignore. Human beings want two things above all else: to feel safe and to feel understood. If you give them those two things, they will listen to you and even agree to things they swore they never would. He shares a story from one of his hostage cases. A man had barricaded himself inside a building, armed and furious. The police outside were preparing for the worst. In that moment, Chris did not try to argue with him about right and wrong. Instead, he spoke slowly, calmly, using the late-night FM DJ voice, a voice so smooth and reassuring that it could calm even the most agitated soul. He mirrored the man's words and labeled his feelings. "It seems like you feel nobody respects you. It sounds like you've been ignored for a long time." Each time Chris labeled the emotion, the man grew calmer. Eventually, he surrendered without a fight. This story shows us that words, when chosen with empathy, can stop violence. If words can stop bullets, then surely they can also help us in our normal lives where the stakes may be smaller but still important. Chris also explains how important silence can be. Most of us feel uncomfortable with silence. After asking a question, we rush to fill the gap if the other person does not answer immediately. But silence is powerful. When you stay silent after asking a calibrated question, the other person feels pressure to explain more. They start revealing their real concerns, their limits, their hidden motivations. Many times, Chris got vital information simply by staying silent and waiting. In our everyday lives, we can also use silence. When you ask someone, "How do you expect me to manage that?" and then remain silent, they will often start rethinking their demand and even lower it themselves. The book also spends time showing how small details can change the whole direction of a negotiation. For example, the way you say numbers can influence how they are received. A random-looking number feels more real than a round number. If you tell someone the price is 50,000, they may think you just guessed. But if you say it is 49,750, they feel you have calculated it carefully, and it is your real limit. Such small psychological tricks make a huge difference because people are constantly looking for signals to decide whether they can trust you. Another thing Chris teaches is the importance of preparing for negotiations. Many people walk into a negotiation without planning, just hoping they can talk their way through. But Chris says preparation is crucial. However, preparation does not mean writing a script, because scripts can break when the situation changes. Instead, preparation means knowing your goals, your limits, your possible questions, and, especially, knowing about the other side. The more you know about the person sitting across from you, the more you can connect with them. Even small details like their background, their struggles, or their personal goals can help you design questions that touch their emotions. Chris goes deeper into the idea of creating illusions of control. Most people hate being told what to do. If you order them, they resist. But if you ask them questions that make them think they are in charge, they happily move in your direction. This is why calibrated questions are so powerful. Questions like, "What would this look like to you?" Or, "How can we solve this problem together?" make the other person feel respected. They feel they are controlling the conversation, but in reality, you are guiding them carefully toward your desired outcome. This way, they not only agree but also feel proud of the decision because it feels like their idea. Chris shares how in business negotiations, people often rush to reach agreement quickly, but that is dangerous. Rushing makes you desperate, and desperation is visible. Skilled negotiators can smell it. Instead, patience is your friend. Take your time, ask questions, listen deeply, and let the other side reveal themselves slowly. Every answer they give, every emotion they show, is a piece of the puzzle. With patience, you gather all the pieces until you can see the full picture, and only then do you make your move. There is also a powerful lesson in how people respond to fairness. Everyone wants to feel they are being treated fairly. If they sense unfairness, they will resist even if the deal benefits them. Chris shows that simply using the word fair can change the atmosphere. If you tell someone, "I want to treat you fairly," it calms them because they feel safe. But he warns to use it carefully because if you misuse fairness as a trick, people can see through it. The point is to genuinely make fairness a part of your strategy, because once people feel fairness, they relax their defenses. Chris also tells us to avoid assumptions. Many times in negotiations, people guess what the other side wants, and they build their whole strategy on that guess. But assumptions are dangerous because they can be completely wrong. Instead of assuming, you should ask and listen. Let the other side tell you what they really want. Sometimes their true desire is not even money but respect, recognition, or security. Once you discover the hidden desire, you can design solutions that satisfy them without losing much yourself. In one hostage case, the criminals asked for money, but after long talks it became clear that what they really wanted was a safe escape. Once Chris understood that, he was able to solve the case. The lesson is clear. Always look for the hidden need behind the visible demand. One of the most practical tools Chris gives us is the accusation audit. Before going into a negotiation, list all the negative things the other side might say about you. Then bring them up yourself. For example, if you are asking for a raise, you might say, "I know you might think I am asking at a difficult time, and maybe it feels like I am pushing too hard." By bringing up the negatives first, you take away their power. The other person feels you are honest and self-aware, and they stop using those points against you. This technique creates trust quickly. The book is full of real stories that make the lessons come alive. Chris does not just give theories. He shares moments where these techniques saved lives. For example, in one case with a group of bank robbers, he used tactical empathy and silence to slowly calm them down until they released hostages without bloodshed. Each story reminds us that these tools are not just about money or deals, but about human survival. If they can work in extreme danger, they can surely work in our daily negotiations. Chris also points out that emotions are contagious. If you come in angry, the other side will become angry. If you are calm, they will mirror that calmness. That is why your tone and mood are as important as your words. He tells us to master 3 tones. The late-night FM DJ voice, calm and deep, used to create safety, The positive, playful voice, friendly and open, used to create connection, and the assertive, direct voice, used rarely when you need to show firmness. Most of the time, the calm voice and the positive voice are the best tools because they invite cooperation. In every chapter, Chris shows that the art of negotiation is not manipulation in the dark sense, but a skill of deep human connection. It is about guiding conversations with empathy, patience, and creativity. The goal is not to crush the other side, but to find a way where they feel they have won while you also get what you need.